Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Mayor and I with me, Lindsay Khan, and Nick Buckley, MBE. Our weekly look at what's happening in the insane world out there, basically, and talking about it. And we ended the last episode, which was episode 39, on the bombshell from Nick that Starmer will go before his government goes, and will not be the full 5 years before that time.
Not a chance.
And this time we're gonna talk about a few other things, but I'd like to welcome Nick to episode 40.
40.
And is it this Christmas? It'll be a year, won't it? So
I think end of January. I think was the first one.
Was it? Yeah. So we're getting to our anniversary.
Yeah.
I wanted to start this time with America, if that's okay. So we'll go across the pond, because you and I have talked again. We had a debate a while ago about how important it was for Trump and Elon Musk in terms of Trump winning and all that, and how important they are to. Your view at the time, and I think quite a lot of our viewers disagree with you, was that they aren't really going to affect. But I think you came round at the end of it to think they do have an impact, and I personally think Trump winning will have a massive impact on what happens in the UK over the next few years.
They will. My point was, well, it was directed at Trump, not a direct impact, because there's nothing Trump can do.
Yeah.
To directly influence the UK. Everything he does will influence the UK in a different way.
Yes.
Secondary way, through social. Those things he can influence the UK.
Well, my argument was I think he has a massive influence because he has a relationship with Farage, which is very important.
It will benefit Reform UK.
Yes.
If he gets in.
Yes.
Reform UK, and Nigel Farage will be the unofficial American ambassador.
Yes. And Musk is important because of Twitter. Because Twitter's our only free speech vehicle in the UK.
The more we talk about Twitter, the more I realise how important Twitter is. I don't think I'm not giving it much thought over the last couple of years, especially since I've come back. But since we've been talking about it, I've been thinking about it outside this, and I've come to the conclusion that I'm beginning to understand now how vital Twitter is. I didn't for the first 18 months being back on Twitter.
I think you're right. And I've told you before, I'm not on Twitter, but my wife is. I think it's the only thing that keeps her sane. Because she sees the horrific things that are happening, and the only way she can make sense of it is by reading what people... Because people say, and there's a cliche, isn't there? People say Twitter's an echo chamber, Twitter isn't real life or whatever. But I think it is. I think Twitter is real life. I think that's where you actually see the reality of what people are thinking, and you actually see correct views on things that are happening, views that make sense. And I think for my wife, it's one of the few things that keeps us sane, basically. And I know for you, it's an important vehicle as well. You've got now, by the way, 40,000 followers on there.
Yeah, Twitter's great because it's all about politics.
Yeah.
And the culture war and stuff like that. A lot of crap on Twitter, a lot of misinformation, a lot of lies. But in between all that is the truth.
Yeah.
Where every other platform, near enough, all the truth's been removed if it's the bad truth.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it'd be interesting to see what the signs are in America at the moment around, because we're coming up to the election. We're as I say, we're in September now.
It's less than 2 months, isn't it?
Yeah, less than 2 months. There's a first debate tonight between Trump and Kamala Harris.
Is there?
Yeah, but I think it's 2:00 in the morning.
I'll watch the clips tomorrow because I'm presuming she's going to look terrible. Not as bad as Joe Biden, but...
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's very interesting is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has joined with Trump as well. Now that is quite an unusual thing, and for our viewers who may not follow American politics, Robert F. Kennedy was a Democrat.
Yeah.
Jr. was a Democrat. He's the son of Robert Kennedy, the one who
he
was
killed
assassinated.
Yeah.
Just
so he's JFK's nephew then.
JFK's nephew.
Yeah.
He is quite a strange character. He's got a funny voice, hasn't he? He's got there's something wrong with his voice. I don't know if it's a muscular thing. If you hear him talking, he sounds like he needs to swallow a glass of water or something. Yeah. And he has quite kind of what they call conspiracy theory views about certain
considering
things.
his dad and his uncle were both assassinated under strange circumstances.
Correct. Yeah.
I'll sort of forgive him on
Yeah.
on that.
No, and I think you know my views. You and I were both anti-COVID, anti-lockdown, all that crap, and he was the same as well. He has very low opinion of the COVID vaccine and all those sort of things, and he has been silenced. You know, the Democrats actively worked against him to prevent him getting a nomination for the primaries or whatever, all that sort of stuff. So he's now embraced Trump literally and physically, and he's on the ticket now. They think that's going to be the defining thing, that because he was going to get quite a high percentage of the Democratic votes.
Well, the Kennedys are one of the closest things in America to their whole family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, so having one of the Kennedys on board is big plus.
Yeah, and there was a joke there which I sent you, which made you laugh, which was that Mia Farrow,
Yeah.
who was married at one point to a comedian called Woody Allen.
Yeah.
She posted a tweet saying, I knew your family very well. She's quite old, Mia Farrow, so she knew the Kennedys.
Big actress in the 70s.
She was massive. Carrie was her first big film.
Yeah.
She was massive, and she was in a lot of Woody Allen films. She put, Robert, I knew your family very well. I knew your family very well. They would be ashamed of what you were doing, because the Kennedys are renowned for being Democrats, basically.
Yeah.
JFK was an incredibly charismatic guy, a bit of a bounder in real life, apparently. But you know, people loved the Kennedys and all that sort of stuff. So she said, Robert, your family, I knew your family really well. They would be ashamed of what you've done. And then somebody immediately below put, Mia, you knew your husband very well. You didn't know he was sleeping with your daughter. So what they're referring to is
That was funny. That was very funny.
Woody Allen actually ended up sleeping with and marrying his stepdaughter, Mia Farrow's stepdaughter, basically.
Yeah. She was adopted.
So she was adopted. Yeah, sorry for the views. It's freaky regardless.
Yeah.
But they said, you know, you knew your husband. You thought you knew your husband very well. Yeah. Look what he did, which I thought was brilliant.
It was a good slap down.
Yes, good slap down. So that's quite interesting. But then there's also other signs that are not so good. Twitter has now been banned in Brazil. Are you aware of that?
Yep.
So I think Musk is getting around about beaming Twitter in on a satellite. Apparently, that's what I've heard. But in the same way that there's some positives, some negatives, and there's a lot of anti-Twitter sentiment now in America from the left wing, from the east and west coast, because Musk has thrown his lot in with Trump, basically. And what's also and Musk now has said publicly, he thinks if Kamala Harris wins, if the Republicans win, that X will start to be censored, regardless of him owning or not. He believes X will start to be brought under governmental, you know, they'll actually bring legislation in to control it, basically.
Lots of Western countries are looking at that.
Lots of Western countries are looking at that. And in addition, the latest, although there is a poll out today that shows differently, but for some bizarre reason, and I'm not sure I believe it, a lot of the polls are saying that Trump and Harris are neck and neck. What do you think is going to happen over there? And how much can we believe what we're being told about the polls and all that sort of stuff?
Let me quickly talk about social media. So Rumble, which is the opposition competition to YouTube,
yes,
has now been banned in Brazil.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
I think it's been banned in another European country. The French have just arrested the owner of Telegram.
Correct. Pavel, I think he's called.
Yeah, who's a Russian immigrant. The clamp down on social media from what we would call democratic societies is already begun, because they can't control it, and every government wants to control it because they know it's one of the ways they'll stay in power. So America is better positioned than most because it has the First Amendment, free speech. But anything can be changed. So we'll see what happens there. Tony Blair was on TV the other day talking about censoring social media. He said, I've not got the answer to how we do it, but it must be looked at because it can't go on the way it's going on. Says the man who created a fake document that took us into a legal war that killed 1 million Iraqis.
Yeah.
So when it comes to lying and propaganda, you know, we need to listen to that man because he knows what he's talking about.
I wonder who actually does listen to Tony Blair these days. Is it just the left, the elite?
Yeah. He's hated by a lot of people, even though most of the hard left hate him.
It's just not relevant though, is he, anymore to people?
No,
I don't think.
But that's who he is. So censorship's happening all over, and it's happening in the West now. Trump and Harris, what do I think? I really don't know, because I don't do much reading up on it at all. I'm not that interested. What happens will happen over there. I'll be surprised if Harris wins. It'll be the biggest shock I've ever seen, because we know she's incompetent. She's been vice president for 4 years. Things have got worse. It's been proved many times she's an idiot. She can't put a sentence together. She's got no ideas. It's the debates.
She also swivels or flip-flops all the time on her policies, isn't she? She didn't want fracking, then she wants fracking.
Politicians do that all the time because people have got a very short memory.
Yeah.
People, as long as you agree with me now, I don't care what your policies were before.
Yeah.
So she'll change policies because that's what they want to hear now. The debate tonight will give us an idea of how good or bad she is. It's also interesting to see over the last few months that a lot of the American media now are discussing Trump's mental capacity for his age. Nobody was discussing...
Hey?
Have you not seen those?
No.
Yeah, no, that's a conversation topic now in America.
Ridiculous.
Considering no one wanted to discuss it
Nobody wanted to mention
2 months ago.
Yeah.
But now suddenly he's old and frail and decrepit, and this younger woman now is the way
They
to
are
go.
bastards, aren't they?
They are, aren't they? So the debate will go one way or the other tonight. So let's see. I'm predicting she'll look like an idiot, but they will be prepping her something like crazy, and she'll do better than Joe Biden did, because at least we know she's stupid, but we know she's capable of learning and lying. He had gone too far. He's capable of lying, but you only can lie when you remember you need to lie. He couldn't remember to lie anymore. She can remember to lie, so she'll probably do better than Biden. But let's see.
So yes, so really you don't really. I guess my question, I was trying to phrase it in a particular way, is I can't see any way that Trump could lose based on where he is, but I guess my question was, do you think they can make it happen so he can lose? I guess that was my question.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because to win or lose the election revolves around something like 5 states. So there's 50 states in America, 45 of them are irrelevant.
Yeah.
We know how they're going to vote. They always vote that way. The people who are going to win those seats have got huge majorities. That's done and dusted. There's 5 swing states that will end up showing us who wins this election. And in those 5 states, there'll be certain areas. So the billions they'll be spending on this targeted certain states, but certain parts of those states. There's cheating in all elections, but how much cheating will go on in this election, we have no idea. But they will be making sure he doesn't win.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, when Trump disputed the results of the last election, she initially didn't believe that was the case, thought it couldn't be the case. Now, 4 or 5 years later, she's convinced there was cheating, that he was cheated out of that last election. So if they can do that, then they've had 5 years to marshal their resources, haven't they? To do it. Because that's the bit that's freaking me out a bit. The fact the polls are showing her neck and neck. It's almost as if they're foreshadowing what the result's going to be by preempting with the polls up, basically.
I think
if that's possible.
It's not that. I think they're showing neck and neck because the polls want to show all the Democrats, this is winnable. This is get out and vote. This is winnable. This is winnable. This is winnable. It's not. all politicians use polls as propaganda if it shows what they want to show.
But won't that just make the Republicans think we better get out and vote then, if that's the case? It works both ways, that, doesn't it?
It does, but it works more if you can see your team.
Closer, yes, you're closer.
If your team, if it looks like your team's going to lose,
yeah,
then you go to yourself, no point me going out and voting.
Yeah.
We're going to lose anyway.
Yeah, and I think in this country, when it was clear the Tories weren't going to win, lots of Tories didn't bother going out and vote.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point. I want to move back from America back to the UK, and the little heading I've got here is DEI. Can it get any worse? DEI is... What does DEI stand for?
Diversity, inclusion and equity.
Diversity, inclusion and equity. And I sent you a picture the other day. I wasn't sending you a rude picture, but I thought I just couldn't believe it. And it's in Cork. And it's the mayor of Cork, or as my wife called when she sent me the picture, said the mayor, or what people are saying on the internet, the mayor of Cock.
Yeah.
Because it's a picture.
Which is in Southern Ireland.
Which is in Southern Ireland. Southern Ireland, as we well know, is a very Catholic, or was a very Catholic, very God-fearing.
Destroyed all that over the last few decades.
Yeah.
Destroyed it all.
And it's a picture of the mayor of Cork, who looks as you would expect the mayor of Cork to look.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a portly, middle-aged man with his full chain and standing there. And he's standing in the middle of a group of, I don't know what I can even call them. What can I call, just perverts? Is that the correct word? Naked men painted with, but basically naked, people dressed in fetish gear, trannies, all that jazz, surrounded by them. I'm not just talking about two people. I'm talking about 30 or 40 people. And he's standing there proudly with that picture taken because it was Pride weekend or some other sort of shit in Cork. And I just thought, this cannot be right. But it was right. It's a real picture. He took it, stood there proudly, the mayor of Cork, in that picture. And I looked at it, I thought, where the hell have we got to as an I know it's technically Europe, but it is Ireland at the end of the day. How have we got from where we were just 10 years ago to this? A picture like that.
If you Google that, you will find pictures just like that in every city of the UK. You'll have the Manchester Lord Mayor with his regalia on at Pride next to naked people and people dressed up as dogs or their asses hanging out. That picture is perfectly normal every Pride now. Yeah,
but Nick, forgive me for this, but isn't there such a I mean, you know the law, don't you? Isn't there such a thing as indecent exposure?
Yes.
Where you cannot be naked in public. There's certain laws around decorum, how you have to dress, all that sort of stuff. And if a man was walking down the street naked, he would be when I was younger, he would be arrested. Yeah. Bundled into the back of a police car, hopefully given a damn good beating by some two policemen with truncheons, although there aren't truncheons anymore. Why have we got to the point now? And you make a really good point. Take any mayor in any major city. I'm sure you wouldn't have done it if you'd become mayor. Why? Firstly, why do they get these pictures? But secondly, why are those people allowed to dress like that in front of children? I'm guessing.
Yeah. You look at Manchester Pride, it goes on every single year. A lot of it is indecent exposure, a lot of it is lewd behaviour, but the police will say you've got to put it in context. So in context, in a Pride event, that's fine. You can do whatever you want if you're one of the special people. You get away, two-tier policing. We had a naked rambler, do you remember him, over several years?
God, yes, I do.
Constantly being arrested. But he can walk around Pride like that.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be arrested, but on the hills and the downs he'd be arrested.
I remember that, yeah, you're right.
So it's all about, are you one of the special people? It's worse than that. Every year in Manchester, in many cities now across Europe, but in the UK, have you heard of the naked bike ride?
I think I've heard about naked bike riders, but I didn't. Is there a naked bike ride?
Right, every year to celebrate riding bikes naked. It used to go down to Deansgate when I lived in the city centre, and several years, not on purpose, several years I was sat in Dimitri's restaurant looking out the window, and here comes the naked.
Did you go for your special window seat every time that year?
No, but it always made me then want a portion of chipolatas. And here we have again naked people riding bicycles on display.
Scandalous.
And it's narcissistic. It's public display. They're doing it to be looked at. It's a kink. It's a fetish.
Yes.
And if I'd have become mayor last year, I'd stopped it. I'd have banned it.
If you'd have put that in your manifesto, that you would have got more votes, I think.
I might have done.
Yeah.
This is just degrading of society, degrading of social norms. There's no more morality. It's what goes is whatever you want to go. That's why, the Pride events now, it used to be about acceptance of homosexuality. Now it's about acceptance of being a pervert.
Yes.
So you look at the kink on display and all that stuff. Kids are we invite kids to come now to look at the perverts. We're turning into Sodom and Gomorrah. What you do in your bedroom, I don't care.
Yes.
I don't care.
As long as nobody gets hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure in my lifetime I've been a bit freaky in a bedroom, but that's down to me. What we should stop.
We'll not explore that anymore.
Is taking so I'm just thinking about.
Move on. Yeah, stop thinking.
Half a bucket of water, 4 frogs and some barbed wire. It's a hell of an evening. But once you take it out of your bedroom and you have it on display and you're purposely doing it so people look at you, that's a kink.
Yes.
That's a fetish. Yeah. And a lot of these people involved in these organisations are also paedophiles.
Yeah.
There was a story a couple of weeks ago. The founder of Surrey Pride has just been arrested for paedophilia. That was 2 weeks ago. It's always people who have got LGBTQ plus in their bio. Not all of them. Some of them are absolutely not paedophiles, but some of the paedophiles.
Yes, I think that's been proven many times, hasn't it? And I think Barry Wall, who we talked about in the last episode, our friend, who is very much on the campaign to stamp out this insanity around transsexuals. Yeah. He often says that these are the first steps to normalising behaviours that ultimately will lead to the ability to access children. Yeah. And I think they're now, the terminology that within the LGBTQ, whatever it is, community about paedophiles is now they call them minor attracted persons. Yeah. Because it's kind of, that's almost...
It's offending to call a paedophile.
Yes.
So we've now got to call them minor attracted persons.
Yeah. And again, we're into the realms of identity politics where minor attracted people, they have rights too.
They have feelings.
They have feelings. We don't upset them, so we need to be inclusive. Yeah. And but of course, the real pederasts, the paedophiles, are seeing this as a gateway. A gateway to children.
It's wide open now. So, do you know what the Q stands for in LGBTQ+?
I thought it was queer.
And what does queer mean?
I have no idea. I don't think queer people know what
it means. If it meant gay, well, why do we need it? Because there's a G there.
Queer used to be gay. He's queer.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Queer now stands for queer theory. Queer theory is a critical theory, a bit like critical race theory and gender ideology. And I wrote an article on it, but in a nutshell, queer theory is basically saying there should be no social norms. All social norms are oppressive because they oppress someone who doesn't fit into the social norm. We need to remove all social norms, and one of those social norms we need to remove is the barrier between adults and children when it comes to sex.
Jesus Christ.
Because that's a social norm. Children have the right to choose themselves. How dare we dictate to children when they can express their sexuality? And this isn't new. In the 1970s, we had an organisation in the UK called PI.
I remember that.
Paedophile Information Exchange. It received government grants.
Yeah, Harriet wasn't...
Harriet Harman wasn't part of it, but she was part of Liberty. And they fought on behalf of PI.
Jesus Christ.
And one of PI's aims was to reduce the age of consent to 3.
The age of consent, these
to
people.
3. This was a fully legitimate left-wing organisation that was supported by Liberty, supported by members of the Labour Party, and received government grants.
Jesus Christ.
And that was the 1970s. So this isn't new, but all comes under queer theory now, which is one of the most...
But it's coming back now. So when...
Yeah, it never went away. It was just undercover. But now the LGBT thing has taken off. But put a Q on it. Q stands for queer. Everyone's going, oh, I'm queer. But under queer is paedophilia.
I think my question was only going to be, why the hell is the mayor of Cork hanging around with these people? Do you think he actually knows why he's there?
No idea. He just knows this is popular. I represent everybody in my community, which he does. I need to go to Pride because Pride is now completely normal, and so he goes along to that. And he's been told, if you don't like any of these things going on here, you're a bigot. Are you a bigot? I'm not a bigot. I'll support them all.
And again, going back to this thing about courage, people should just say stuff about this. Somebody should say, this is not acceptable. When somebody says, oh, did you go to Pride last week? No, I didn't, but what happened at that nudity is unacceptable. It's a simple statement, isn't it, to make? People need to be stronger and start saying so. This stuff is not acceptable.
The more we talk
these blokes
about
walking along with two blokes dressed in fetish gear like dogs, that is unacceptable.
It is in public. What we'll find is the more we talk about this, the more we realise the whole LGBTQ agenda is the emperor's new clothes. That everyone else is thinking exactly what we're thinking, but haven't got the courage to say it. Hence why we need to be the ones to say it. That will give other people to go, well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I just thought it was me who thought all this was wrong. Hence why we need listeners to say facts like, no, this is perverted, I don't support Pride. And leave it at that.
Yeah. This is perverted, it's right.
It's perverted, I don't support Pride.
Moving on my DIE list, I think just on that, so we hear all the time about the NHS and how they're strapped for cash, need all money or whatever. The Derbyshire NHS have just hired a diversity officer on £80,000 a year. Yeah. What the fuck are they going to be doing?
Nice wage if you can get it.
No, it's a lovely wage.
It's a nice wage if you can get it.
What the hell are they going to do?
Last time I looked at NHS stats for an article I wrote a couple of years ago, it was something like 48% of all medical staff in the NHS are black, Asian, ethnic minority.
So they don't need a diversity officer.
But something like...
They need an anti-diversity officer.
Something like 60% of all non-medical staff in the NHS were black, Asian, ethnic minority.
Right.
So there's no problem in the NHS over diversity. We have too much diversity. Half the staff can't speak English. So there's a problem. What's the role of that job? That role of that job is to make everyone feel better who sits on the NHS Trust board. Oh, we've got a diversity officer.
Yeah.
We're going to paint a rainbow outside the hospital. Have you got cancer? Oh, sorry, 18-month waiting list to treat your cancer. We can't afford any more doctors. Well, there's 2 doctors' salaries and they're 80 grand.
Yeah. The just going back to this idea of courage. If somebody says to you in a dinner party, mentions DEI or whatever, what's the response to that one? Which my response is DEI is bollocks. But, is that the correct response? Or
correct response is, DEI, it's racist.
Right, okay.
That's the response. DEI is racist.
Yeah.
Because show me how it's not racist.
Yeah. It promotes...
You're giving people chances and pushing other people away, all based on their race.
Yes.
That's called racism.
Yes. Race or skin colour. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. Remember that one, folks. DEI is racist. Moving on to the tranny madness, which we talked about. And my answer to this one is always very simple. Men can't be women. I think that's my response on that when anybody addresses this with me. You don't have to have a massive argument about the tranny thing, do you? It's like men can't be women and women can't be men. It's quite a simple one, isn't it?
That's it.
We've now
and if they then mention gender expression and gender ideology, so men can't become women biologically. I'll accept that, but gender expression, or do you mean personality?
Yes.
Personality exists, and you can have any personality you want and express your personality.
Yeah.
Any way you want.
Yeah, and I've got no problem with that.
And it's not gender expression, it's personality.
Yeah.
Biological sex, personality.
Yes. We need to summarise all these things down, actually. So moving on to the tranny madness now. So we've seen male boxers in the Olympic knocking the 7 bells out of women.
Yep.
Yeah. which is not difficult for a man to do.
Yeah.
Any man, even I think if you stuck a 40, 50-year-old man against those women, he would untrained, would have beaten them. We're now moving on. We've moved on to the Paralympics, which is just finished, by the way. But I think quite interestingly, Macron was booed at the closing ceremony.
Good.
Of the Paralympics.
He's losing control of France.
Yeah, I think
because of the elections.
I think you're right.
The hard right, the hard left don't like him because he stopped them getting the prime minister. He's Keir Starmer needs to look at him because he's going to go the way Keir Starmer's going.
Yeah, there's the model. Yeah, I think you're right. So Valentino Atrillo, you may have seen pictures of this bloke who thinks he's a woman, who's pretending to be a woman.
And did we talk about him last episode?
Yes, but in the context of something else.
Oh right, sorry.
I can't remember what we were talking about. So he's married with 2 children. And this is the insanity of these people.
Lots of women are married with 2 children.
Yes, that's true.
But he fathered his children.
He's married with 2 kids. He's a bloke who's grown his hair long and dyed it blonde. That isn't why I'm growing my hair long, by the way. But the insanity of this, and the fact this was reported in the mainstream media, he said he's always wanted to run in the Paralympics ever since he was a little girl. Now, so you have a man here who's a self-confessed tranny. He's converted tranny from a boy to a man to a woman.
Yeah.
Obviously he hasn't. He's just grown his hair long and pretends he's doing. But then he's saying that he wanted to be a Paralympian ever since he was a little girl. And why does the reporter who writes that out just at that point just burst out laughing and say, "What an absolute load of bollocks"?
Because they've bought into all this. That reporter knows if he reports it the way he said it, he'll get a lot of kudos for reporting this trans woman's view that he was always... If you're a trans woman, that means you was always a woman. So even when you was a little boy, you were really a little girl, you just didn't know you was a girl and didn't show yourself to be a girl because society held you down. Those social norms, that queer theory example, held you down. But you was always a little girl. You just didn't know you was a little girl. So it's right to say you were a little girl. More likely, when he was touching a little girl, he wanted to win in the Olympics. That's probably what he meant.
And finally, on the tranny thing, Sutton United female team.
Yeah.
The new goalkeeper is a bloke, basically, who obviously is, we know when we say he's a bloke, he'll have grown his hair long, and he'll be prancing around in an outfit that women never wear, I guess. And I think it's caused a bit of furore. This I can't remember the story exactly. The
story was the opposition team refused to play.
Yes, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think this is what should be happening more now.
Finally, female athletes are beginning to realise that if they don't do something, it's the end of their sports. And these athletes, I shouldn't need to stop this.
Yeah,
is for women to go, I'm not playing. Like the female darts player who's about to be banned for life. I think it was for life, but it's about to be banned because every time she's up against a trans darts player, she goes, not playing anymore.
Yeah. And that's courage.
That's courage because she's going to lose her career and her income by sticking up for the sport and sticking up for what is right. That's what heroes do. Heroes take a fight and enter a fight they don't have to fight, but do it for the right reasons, and that benefits other people. So you're not a hero if you're being attacked and you fight back. Well, that's self-defense. That's not a hero. Hero is when you go and protect someone else who's being beaten up. And that's what some of these women athletes are beginning to do now. They could easily keep their mouth shut, like 99% of all the other cowardly female athletes. But some of them have had enough and going, no, we need to make a stand.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you and I have discussed this a few times. And in the past I've said, I understand why they've done it, because they've trained their lives or whatever, and I've tried to defend them. But I am coming around to your way of thinking. I think this is what they should have been doing from the very beginning. The first time it happened.
And it would have stopped it there.
Yeah, it stopped it dead at that point. I think this backlash has come from America. Riley Gaines, have you heard of her? She's a female swimmer, isn't she? She's the one who stood up against this. I can't remember his name now. That big bloke who who still had his penis, who swam against all the, I can't remember his name, he's so insignificant, coward, he was a coward. But she's the one that stood up against him.
Yeah.
And she's lost her career now as a result of that. But she's famous now, she's on, gets lots of whatever. So we're now starting to see it at last, and it's great that whoever was playing Sutton United decided not to play. And I think if this carries on, as it's starting to gather momentum, I hope now, even the Olympics with that girl being knocked out, I think people started to recognise then there was something not quite right, and it's become more. Whereas before people didn't even comment on it now, I think now people are starting to react, which is a positive, I think. It
is. We need more brave female athletes making a stand. Not talking about it, making a stand, which is not compete against you because you're not a woman.
Yeah.
Not going to compete against you. I don't compete against men.
Yeah.
When you're a man, I'm not competing.
Yeah.
I'm walking off, and that's it.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? We're talking about the perversion of the LGBTQ, how it's become perverted. One thing I've noticed, which is really annoying to me, when you have trannies at work, particularly trans women, blokes who think who like to dress as women, perverts, generally in my opinion, they are allowed to come to work dressed in the most outrageous clothes, like, skimpy, negligee.
All women are. No, seriously, women are allowed to wear what they want.
No, but they're not, because if somebody came to my work, if one of the women or one of the men came to work dressed in a G-string and I'd say, go home now and get changed to something appropriate. If a woman turned up wearing a boob tube and suspenders, I'd say, go home, get changed and come back into work.
Most employers are not as brave as that. Women can get away with almost anything in most workplaces.
I don't see women coming in. But what?
Have you seen Parliament? Look at question times on Parliament. You've got female. You had a female MP asking the question of a day in a denim jacket in Parliament.
No, but a denim jacket is.
No. But I'm just saying they can wear what they want.
Yeah.
There's been pictures of women in the chamber with low cleavage tops on. So women can wear. So there's always
but these trans.
I get your point.
Yes,
because it's a fetish for them.
They're coming and dressing in.
Turns them on. What they're wearing turns them on.
But nobody says to them that's inappropriate for the workplace. Go home.
And that's because they wouldn't say the same thing to a woman either.
No, I think they would.
I'm not sure they would. You've got to be brave to challenge a woman in the workplace. Now, unless you're the owner, you'd be very brave.
Yeah.
You'd never do it at the council.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you'd never. We've got set rules.
Yeah.
So every major organisation has got rules.
Yes.
It would have to be stated in that for you to pull anybody up on anything they're wearing. Yeah, especially a woman, and a trans woman is a woman to all these organisations. So why do I have to go home and get changed? It's because you think I'm a man. You're picking on me because you're transphobic.
Yeah.
You've got to be brave to have that fight when it's not your company.
Yeah. You're probably right, and I suspect a lot of these blokes who are doing that, it's in the public sector or a very large institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to take you back to 2014, Nick.
No, I was 18.
You're in your prime.
18 stone.
And I've got a list here, and I just want to know, would any of these have been conceivable in 2014? So firstly, men competing with women at the Olympics and the Paralympics. No. Men in women's prisons.
No.
The mayor of Cork surrounded by a bunch of naked perverts.
No. Oh.
Maybe that would have been, maybe 2014.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
7 million a day spent on illegal immigrants.
No.
8 billion a year being spent on asylum seekers and immigration.
No.
People being jailed for shouting, "You're not English anymore."
No.
People being jailed for a tweet.
No.
Did we have Twitter in 2014?
Yeah.
10 million immigrants being allowed into the country in the last decade.
No.
I don't know if that number's right, actually.
I think it's 10 million over the last 15 years.
And the reason I said that is I was watching. There's on New Culture Forum. There's a professor called Professor Philip Kilsley.
Yeah.
Kilsey.
Yeah.
And he actually said, could you imagine men in women's prisons 10 years ago? And when he said that got me thinking, and I thought, actually, let's get a list of things that are happening now and see if any of those were conceivable 10 years ago. And that they weren't, were they? If somebody had walked in and said, we're spending $8 billion a year on illegal immigrants, there'd have been chaos.
Yeah. Even worse than that, especially on the trans prison thing. It's not that long ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where there was LGBT activists, promoters on TV talking about how we need to be trans inclusive. And when they were asked, well, what about if a trans woman gets to a female, and they would say, this is nonsense. This will never happen. It's transphobic to even use that as an excuse. That's transphobic because we're not stupid. We would never send a trans woman into a female prison because this is just pure. Several years later,
it's happening.
There's women being raped in female jails in the UK. So a lot of this was not seen coming down the tracks. And even when people were raising concerns about it, they were lied to that this would never happen. We would never do that. And it's all lies.
And 10 years is not a long time, is it?
No, it's not.
10 years isn't, especially when you're our age, Nick. I mean, obviously you're very old, but you know, the 10 years is not a long time. But if I went back to the 2014 Nick and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to give you a glimpse of the future," I think you would be gobsmacked to see that list.
I don't think I'd have believed it. I don't. Lots have changed over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
A lot of the trans stuff started in 2014 because that was the year of gay marriage.
Yes.
And then once we had gay marriage, all the gay charities and all the activists all went, "What are we going to do now?
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's bring the T on board.
Yeah.
We can carry on fighting and keeping our pensions."
Yeah.
All changed in 2014.
And it's a really important point that you've made it before. I think it's a really important point that, and I think it's interesting because when you said gay marriage, then I think maybe some of our viewers would have thought, "Oh well, this isn't because of gays that the trans thing," and it isn't because of gay people.
It is.
Well, it's not because of gay people. It's because of where the gay movement got to that the trans thing started.
I would say a lot. It starts with breaking down social norms. Homosexuality has never been a social norm, and then we made it a social norm. So other people went, well, if you can make homosexuality a social norm, you can make my exception a social norm, and it's that slippery slope of everybody wanting what the people before them had, and that's what's led to this.
But,
I'm not saying homosexual is right or wrong. I'm not saying changing it is right or wrong. I don't know. I'm just saying this is the direction of travel.
Yeah.
I didn't start with that, but
because I think there's a big dislocation between homosexuality and the trans thing. People link them together, but I don't think they have any relationship. Homosexuality is a sexual preference.
Yeah.
Trans belief that you're another sex is a mental illness, isn't it? Because you're
up to recently, homosexuality was classed as a mental illness.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I know it was classified as sexual illness, but homosexuality, when all said and done, is a sexual preference. Basically, it's a sexual thing, isn't it?
They are different.
Yes.
Point, I'm not saying they're the same. The point I'm trying to make is, once you make exceptions for one group, other groups then say, I want the same exceptions. And then it's a slippery...
I'm not convinced. I don't think... Because homosexuality, the discussion and legalise it, that's been discussed for centuries, hasn't it? And been happening for centuries, hasn't it? The trans thing may have been isolated incidents, but the volume we're seeing now is nothing like the reality of what it should be in my view.
No, because the more you normalise mental illness, the more mental illness you'll get.
Yeah.
The more you normalise homosexuality, the more homosexuality you'll have.
But I'm not sure I agree that homosexuality is a mental illness.
Well, every doctor in the world before the last 2 decades would have disagreed with you.
Yes. Yeah.
It was in all the medical books as a mental illness. It was treated as a mental illness. I'm not saying it's a mental illness.
No, I'm just saying. I'm stalling here because I haven't got the answer to this one.
Yeah, but these are complicated topics. All that happened is we normalised it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then another group comes along and go, well, I want you to normalise what I'm doing.
Yeah. because the trouble is, you're now backing me into my little corner that I always go to, which is stuff I've believed since
I've always believed this to be true, and
yes,
now, and
yeah.
I don't know why I believe it to be true.
Yes, because you're backing me now, and I'm not really considered about homosexuality. I've certainly considered about abortion. I've considered about various other things as well. I've changed my views, not necessarily on abortion, but certain things I used to believe, because I'd been brainwashed with them since I was a kid, and homosexuality was one of those things. Even as a child in the 70s, 60s, late 60s and 70s, it was something that our generation was told, oh, it's fine. I mean, it was in, it was
on mainstream TV. We had Are You Being Served?
Yeah, John Inman. Yeah.
And then in the 80s we had
Larry Grayson.
So these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duncan Norvell, Chase Me.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was meant to be gay or not. But no, that was happening on the radio in the 40s and 50s with Kenneth Williams and people like that. That was happening around then, wasn't it? But the general thrust of my background has always been homosexuals have rights, gay people have rights, blah, 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 whatever. I may not necessarily agree with gay marriage, actually, because that's something I have slightly different views on for various reasons, to do with Christianity and stuff. But the gay thing, I've never really questioned it. And now you've got me backed into my little corner, because I can't come up with a good answer to what you're saying. Yeah, so I need to go away and have a think about that one. I thought you might like that 2014 thing, but it's interesting. 2014 is when gay marriage is legal.
It's an important date,
yeah. It's an interesting point, that. I'm not sure there is a link, but there might be. Something I wanted to talk about for a while, and I've been reading a lot about recently, and the reason I want to talk about this is because you and I talk about multiculturalism, illegal immigration, legal migration. I think we're both pretty much of the view that immigration is out of control in this country, and it's undermining a lot of our values, our systems, our people, our resources, and all that sort of stuff, and something needs to be done about it. And a big part of that is the fact that Muslim communities are a big part of that immigration side of it, and we've seen with the Enough is Enough riots and all those sorts of things that the Muslim communities have been involved in this, both actively in terms of reacting to the riots, but also being used by the government as an excuse for punishing the so-called far-right voters. We go call them Islamophobic and stuff like that. And I was very conscious that we talk about Muslims and Islam and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't really know that much about Islam, even though my father was a Muslim, by the way. I don't know if I told you that
I didn't
before.
know that.
Yeah, my dad was Muslim. When he came from Trinidad, he came from a Muslim community. I mean, Khan is a Muslim name, as you probably know. But he didn't practice Islam when he was here. But there were a few occasions I saw him interacting with other Muslims, and it was very clear he understood that culture and that background. So I've started to do I'm calling this a history of Islam part 1, but I wanted to go. There's a lot to study in it, a lot, and I know you know a bit about it.
A little bit.
I think. And I just wanted to talk about kind of the beginning of Islam, and maybe get your thoughts on some ideas that I wasn't aware of, but maybe you are aware of, and whether the ideas I'm attaching to it make sense, basically. So Muhammad was born in 57. I don't know if, again, whether our viewers know this or not. Islam happened 600 years after Christianity, so it was like nearly 1,000 years after Christianity. Muhammad was born in 570 AD, and he started to believe when he was 40, so he wasn't a young man. When he was about 40, he started to believe he was getting messages from the angel Gabriel. And the Quran, literally translated, means recital of messages. So the Quran is meant to be the messages Muhammad got from the angel Gabriel when he was 40 in a cave or whatever. So he was 40 in 610, and he was living in Mecca then, which is the home of Islam, as we know. And the first 10 years, I don't know if you knew this, he was preaching the Quran and the message of God in Mecca, and he was doing it in a very peaceful way, saying blah, 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 whatever. But he wasn't very successful, so he only had around 100 followers at that point. And he was pretty roundly mocked by most of the other people in Mecca, who thought he was a bit of an idiot, basically, you know, and because he was doing all this stuff. And then in 620, he was kind of thrown out of Mecca and headed to a place called Medina. I'm guessing all this is in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, yeah.
All this is Saudi Arabia, basically. Now, when he went to Medina, he thought his ideas that he put together in Mecca would be accepted by... He was almost saying to the people in Mecca, you may not like what I'm saying here, but the people in Medina will understand, the Jews and the Christians, because it was Jews and Christians mainly around there. And he went... this is the important point. He was kind of mocked in Mecca. He went to Medina thinking he would be accepted by the Jews and the Christians in 622. He was also mocked when he arrived in Medina as well. And that's when he became violent. He became a warlord, basically, and he changed the face of Islam from being a peaceful, what's called the Mecca period of Islam, to a far more violent, which is basically about, you know, anybody who didn't follow. And part of the reason he did this was because he was reacting to the reaction he got when he arrived in Medina. He was mocked again, made fun of, and he just didn't like it, so he changed the nature of...
A bit like the far left. Be kind, be compassionate, don't agree with me, I'm going to kill you.
Yes. That's a very good parallel. So that's when it changed, and that's when he started battles. He became a warlord. He also said that basic subjugation by the sword, and that's when Islam exploded. Because, of course, what he was saying then to his followers was, come with me. Yeah, we're going to kill people, we're going to take from them. If people don't submit to our religion, we can have their goods. And by the way, if you die, you'll go to heaven, and there'll be 40, they weren't called Vestal Virgins, but they were particular. So he started to preach a far more aggressive form of Islam, a combination of the Quran messages and a combination of a way to live your life, which is encapsulated in a thing called the Hadith. But the bit, we'll go on a little bit from here, but the bit I want to discuss with you is, there's two bits I want to discuss with you here. Firstly, the idea that I don't know if you've heard of this, it's a thing called abrogation. Have you heard about this? And this is a concept in the Quran that the later verses supersede the previous verses. Does that make sense? So, and it's called abrogation, basically. And this was preached by Muhammad and by Islam, that basically the later verses of the
are more correct.
Quran are more correct and override. So you get this kind
just like laws.
Just like laws. So you get this kind of schizophrenic aspect to the Quran and to Islam, which is, there's a lot of the Quran which talks about peace and blah, 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 whatever. Then the later versions of the Quran and the Hadith are all about violence, subjugation, killing of the
infidels.
The infidels, the kafirs, they call them, basically. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, because I think what's interesting is people often talk about Islam as a religion of peace. So I want to talk about that and how that is I think has been perverted by the idea there's two sections to the Quran and to Islam. And the second thing is the mockery thing, because that's very, very relevant and germane to what's happening now. We are not allowed to mock Islam. And what I didn't realise is that concept, the idea that Islam, Muhammad cannot be mocked, is rooted in the very heart of what happened at that time. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the two styles in the Quran, very opposite but very familiar to the Holy Bible. Old Testament, wrath of God, Sodom and Gomorrah will destroy both cities and kill millions of people because they're perverts. Later we get the New Testament, peace be upon you, he who hasn't sinned cast the first stone. And so there's contradictions in all holy books, ones I've read. Holy Bible's a bit different, as in the later chapters become more peaceful and more and the Christianity we think of today, but the Quran's the opposite way round. You can pick any book, any holy book, and justify anything you want to do. there'll be a story, there'll be a section that fits what you're trying to do. So it's easy to pick a big book and pick bits out that validate what you want to do, and that's what most people do in any religion. Again, when I'm writing an article and I'm looking for research, I find the research that backs up the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
I then don't publish the research that says I'm completely wrong because this other research was
correct. So confirmation bias. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're all looking for that. And your last point was?
The last point was about the mocking.
The mocking, yes. I mean, we know this to be true.
I didn't realise it went so far back though. I thought it was just a recent thing to say, oh, you can't mock it.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was kind of embedded in the heart of Islam.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about that, but no one likes to be mocked. I talked about an argument I'd had with my wife where I mocked her, and
please don't do that on camera.
Didn't go down too well.
Yeah, I'd have been annoyed as well.
But that's why that's why people don't like to be mocked.
I think she did very well not punching you in the nose. I think that was very good.
But we see that with the far left. The far left don't like to be mocked. And it's a very powerful non-violent tool, is to mock someone and call them foolish.
But I don't think in Christianity there was ever anybody saying you couldn't mock Jesus. I don't remember that as kind of embedded in the heart of Christianity.
Oh,
don't mock Jesus.
I'm sure if you was in the Middle Ages and you mocked Jesus, I'm sure a stake with some kindling would be found fairly quickly. So that happens.
Yeah.
Happens. It just depends on the time scale. Now, if you wanted to be kind to Islam, you could say that they're 600 years behind the development of Christianity. So when would we say Christianity changed from being a persecutor, such as the Spanish Inquisition and the witch burning and stuff like that, to being what we class now as a peaceful religion? I would say it's probably 200 years. So maybe Islam will get to where Christianity is now in another 400 years.
Well, it's interesting. We talked about this last time. I don't know, which is about the fact that it was getting there, wasn't it? In Iran in the 70s.
Yep.
In Syria and in Iraq, in those places, in Lebanon. In the 70s, the Muslims used to wear suits. Yeah. The women wore dresses or whatever. So it was actually getting there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think what will kill radical Islam and what changes religion is a lack of poverty in education. So religion has always been the opium of the masses, the poor, because your life's crap, you've got nothing. At least you can believe there's going to be a better afterlife. At least you can believe the suffering on earth now has been directed by, a god, a super being, something like that. And a tough life is easy to get through when you think someone is looking out for you up above, and the things you're suffering have meaning because God works in mysterious ways. That's a lot of comfort for poor, uneducated people. The way Islam will change and the way some of these countries will change will through becoming richer and education. Both of them will bring a different set of problems. Hence, look at our society now. Single mothers, no fathers in the home, knife crime, perverts everywhere, men thinking they're women. So it'll bring a whole set of new problems, but the old problems will go.
Yeah. The point I think I was trying to make is that if we talk about the origins of Islam, the Mecca period, the Medina period, what I think, and again this concept of abrogation, the idea that the later years supersede the early years, what is also apparently written in the Hadith or within the Quran is that if a Muslim finds themselves amongst infidels, they have to preach the Mecca version of the Quran. And this is where I think, and maybe you will correct me if I'm wrong here, the idea that Islam is a religion of peace comes from, because the Muslims who are preaching in infidel territory quote the early Quran,
Yeah.
not the later Quran. But that's part of the instruction of Muhammad as part of the way, as part of the process of Islam taking over
Of conquest.
of conquest, basically.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people do call Islam a religion of peace, but Islam doesn't mean peace, does it?
No, Islam
means submit.
Submit. That's it.
It means submit
to Allah
for peace.
Yeah.
It literally means submit
Yeah.
to Allah for peace, basically.
Every religion says they're a religion of peace. Every single one of them. The Crusades said it as they were slaughtering Turks.
Yeah, but why were the Crusaders doing that?
Power. They wanted to reconquer the whole land.
Yeah, they were taking back. What the Crusaders did, and this was after 600 or 700 years, wasn't it? They went back to retake the Christian lands that the Muslims had taken over.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing.
Yeah,
but it's portrayed.
It was for power.
Yeah, it's portrayed now in history that they were the aggressive force, but they weren't. They were actually trying to retake land and to oppose the Muslim threat at that point.
They were the aggressors. It was all about power, money, status of European kings and the Pope and stuff like that. It was an invasion. Right or wrong, who knows?
Yeah. I think we've been sold that story. I think if you look into it properly, it's the result of 1,000 years of encroaching in on the West, basically. Anyway, so carry on. Yeah.
Because don't forget, the whole land was never Christian.
Yes, it was.
Oh, no, it was never Christian.
Yeah, it was. All those lands were Christian. Israel, all those places, Syria, Iran was Zoroastrian. They were all Christian areas. That's the whole point. North Africa, were all up there, all around the Mediterranean, was all Christian.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
And but it's interesting you say that, because that's a very modern concept. The idea that the Crusaders were invading Muslim lands. It wasn't the case at all. They were actually trying to retake and recapture the Christian lands, basically. Because one of the things a lot of people say when you talk about persecution of Christians in all these Muslim countries, they say, well, what the hell are they doing there anyway? No. It was there. They were there first, basically. I think there was something interesting we saw the other day, wasn't there, about Iran? About 1 million the more and more Muslims in Iran are converting to Christianity. Yeah. And the numbers are staggering, like millions of them, basically, which I didn't know. I don't think we were told about, are we?
No, not at all.
In the West, that this is happening out there, basically.
Because if you get a proper Islamic government, the people don't want it. People think they want it because it sounds good until they get it. It's a bit like communism. People want communism until you get it. And when you get it, all those countries have to build a wall around their country to keep the people in. Yeah. But all those people wanted it at some stage. Yeah. And it's the same with Islam's exactly the same. People don't want an Islamic regime running their country. They may think they do at some point because they've been sold lies or sold a utopia. But once they get it, people want prosperity, freedom, and personal choice. That's what we all want. And you just look at migration across the world. That's what all migration goes to. People want more money, more freedom, and more personal choice.
Yeah. I think there's more to talk about on Islam. Maybe we cover it next time.
Just do a little segment at the end of every one we do. Yeah.
But I think what was interesting for me for those 2 points is, one, I now understand why mockery of Islam is not really tolerated by anybody. And the second thing is to do with the understanding of the two periods of Islam, the peaceful period and the way, and what's quite frightening for me is the fact both of those concepts are very much alive in today's Muslim society or Islamic society, and are going to be at the cornerstone really of the Islamophobia laws we're going to be seeing soon as well.
Possibly. The two sides of Islam, I can see The earlier version is what moderate Muslims want, and moderate Muslims can arrange their lives around that. The later stage is the radical Islam, and that's being promoted by Muslim men who want power, because that's how you get power, by the end of a sword. And this has to be dealt with by the Muslims themselves. They've not had a reformation, they've had wars between themselves, but with education and a better lifestyle, they need to produce the leaders they need to change their own communities and interpret their religion better. Not in the right way or the wrong way, who am I to decide, but in a better way for them to live their lives going forward. And I think it can be done.
On that note, Nick Buckley MBE, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers, I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.